Welcome back everyone to more NASCAR Heat 4 at Knee Pit Gaming. In today's video I want to take a quick look at some recent gameplay footage that was released. We're looking at a qualifying hot lap at Daytona in the Cup car. So what we're seeing here is actually pretty concerning to me. Now before we get too deep into this, take a look in the bottom right hand corner. You can also look in the top right hand corner for the lap times, but let's look in the bottom right hand corner right now and see that we are hitting 203, 204 at the end of the back straightaway as we approach the entry to turn 3. We then slow down to around 197 in the corner. That is very concerning to me because that's not close to realistic. Now, I will back up and say this game isn't intended to be a racing simulation the way that a lot of us are used to with NASCAR 2003 or iRacing and so on. It's not intended to be that. That's not their market and their demographic. However, to me, this is going way too above and beyond what we see in real life. And here in just a moment, I want to take a look at some speeds that I think will give us a little bit better understanding about where things should be and could be if you want to get these speeds pretty close to realistic. But again, the major points to see here, we're doing 204 by ourselves on the back straightaway. So no drafting, you're simply in Q trim trying to hit these speeds. So now let's come back and take a look at a few examples of some recent speeds at Daytona and Talladega and make a few comparisons. Let's start by taking a quick look at some recent practice speeds from the July race at Daytona. And as we take a look at the top of the chart, you'll notice we're 205, almost 206. We see several 205s below that, a 204 here. We've got 203s and so on. So at first glance, without any context to it, the speeds in that video look about right. But there are two very important distinctions. Number one, this car was in qualifying trim. Second is they were alone on the track, which means no draft. Every one of these times was done with the benefit of the draft. And in fact, the higher you get on the speed chart, the reason why teams don't put any stock at all in the speed charts for Daytona and Talladega is because they know the guys at the top simply had the perfect case scenario in order to reach this top speed. So you're looking at Martin Truex to get up around 206 for an entire lap. He was probably at the back of the pack catching the rest of the pack, and that pack was catching another pack. So everything was the perfect scenario for him to be gaining time on everyone around him. And you can see the speeds drop off pretty quickly. I mean, the difference between 205 and 202 is pretty drastic whenever you think about it in terms of the overall speed, because you go from a 43.7 on lap time down into the mid 44s. So that is a huge difference, and just goes to show you how powerful the draft is. If we want to have a little bit better idea of what these cars do alone on the track in qualifying trim, let's take a look at the Talladega race from earlier in the season. Here you can see the times and the speeds. Now, of course, the time isn't going to be similar to what we saw at Daytona because the tracks are obviously different in both shape and length. However, take a look at these speeds, and this is from round number 2. This is the top 12 cars. All right, you're looking at 192.5 miles an hour on the pole. So you're looking at speeds on the straightaway, probably a mile per hour or two, roughly above that. Speed in the corner, maybe a mile per hour or two less than this. So we're looking at maybe 194 or 195 if we're generous on the straightaways, and that's it. Nowhere near 203 or 204. Now, I understand that these guys have been working on these physics for quite a while, so they may have put this in place before all of this has happened, because of course we know that NASCAR has made a change to the rear spoiler and put a humongous rear spoiler on these things for Daytona and Talladega right now. And I'm sure in the future, they're going to want to be looking to slow these cars down even more at those tracks. So this does ultimately have me a little bit worried. There's time for them to patch this out, but I've got to believe this close to release that we're looking at the final product at least after the day one patch, and then we'll see where we go from here. But I did want to point that out because while it looks great on the screen and to their core different demographic that, hey, we're running 200 miles an hour and that's awesome, it's not close to realistic once you put it into context. That's going to do it for today. Thank you very much for joining me, and stay tuned as we will continue our support of NASCAR Heat 4.